Okay. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Good Deeds Note Investing Podcast, Open Mic Night. So I just realized I said good evening. We usually let it be kind of timeless, like you never know what time we're doing things. But since we can see the pitch dark outside the window behind you, I guess we're not fooling anyone if we pretend it's not night. So tonight is another adventure. We've been having lots of great guests on, but we figured you all could use a break. So tonight it's just the home team. I am your host, Gail Anthony Greenberg, and to my left is the lovely Christopher Seveny.
Hi, Gail.
Chris.
How are you?
You look very freshly showered again.
Showered, shaved. I mean, man, I feel like I look, like I could put a suit on and be professional, or
Yeah,
at least look professional, maybe not active, but yeah.
You really look 12 years old is what you look. So, so yes, Casey, where are you? Casey is saying it's daylight where he is.
He's in like Wyoming.
Really?
Yes.
You and Harrison Ford, huh, Casey? Do you ever bump into him at the convenience store? Actually, I have a friend
Colorado.
who just.
Okay, he's Colorado. Okay. By the way, Wyoming is, it's a little bigger than like Rhode Island, so
not like everybody sees each other. Well, there's only like 50 people though, right? Mm-hmm. And they're all in Jackson Hole and a couple other places. So I think I'm, Laramie? I'm probably not completely wrong.
No. I was Rock Springs, Wyoming. I held a note in Rock Springs, so it's one of my states that I checked off my list. Yep. We've got a lot of them getting checked off now. So
yeah, this is the real reason we're buying pools now, right? It's your crazed lust for notes in all kinds of crazy places.
Getting close to the 48 continental states, except for, a few. But, Alaska, Hawaii will probably be the last two. Actually, California will be the last one.
California, I was going to say. You need some serious money. Yeah, you talk about running into celebrities. I have a friend who just went to Maine, and she ran into Patrick Dempsey in a food store.
Mm-hmm.
You know who he is, right?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
No, I
I called Chris a pop culture idiot the other day, so now I always check to see if he knows who people are and what something is.
I don't watch much TV. If I do, it's a sporting event, so that's kind of what I've got going on. But speaking of what going on, Gail, what just happened with you? Anything new and exciting?
Well, I don't know if everyone heard me at the beginning. I found out that my house that I'm trying to sell in Mississippi that I thought had a big crack in the foundation actually has a sinkhole underneath it. And there are people from Asia climbing out of the hole and wandering around in Mississippi. So this was initially terrible news, but then I just asked you if it's possible that there could be an insurance claim now that it's not just a crack, but a hole. And I feel renewed hope that maybe there's a way out of this thing.
So, well, for me, as I mentioned, I think previously, I got the funds and closed on my first long distance rehab in Fort Wayne, which technically I replaced the roof. So technically,
yeah, you did rehab. That's true.
Could that be a rehab?
I'm sure most of the money you got was purely for that great new roof.
Actually, you know what? About 25% of it was.
So, money well spent.
Yes, is one that unfortunately in this industry you don't make money on every deal. This one I didn't make any money on the deal. So
yeah,
but
I've got one of those going on also. So people have heard me talk about my serial bankruptcy declarer who declared bankruptcy 7 times in 6 years. Mm-hmm. And I had a note. I now have a house. It used to be a note. I successfully foreclosed after years, seriously years. And during that time, not only did I have legal bills pile up, but there was delinquent taxes that just literally doubled. This is not a cheap tax county to begin with.
Was this where you're using the divorce attorney to do the foreclosure?
Yes. Okay, technically he's not a divorce attorney. I don't know what he's good at. Not foreclosures. That was definitely not his cup of tea. All right. Okay. So I know we always consider people to jump into notes and start taking your lumps, because the sooner you get it over with, these like stupid mistakes, the sooner you'll be done. But this is one of the first notes that I ever bought. And I will be lucky at this point, given the delays, the piling up of the taxes and penalties and everything. I'll be lucky if I only lose like $9,000 on it. I bought it in my IRA, so luckily there's no, person who entrusted me with their funds. Who's, I have to break this news to. But it really made me think. Like, this was one of the first notes that I bought, and boy, talk about your catalog of beginner mistakes. I don't want people to feel discouraged, like they can't buy anything until they're experienced, and then you can't get experience until you buy something. But there is a little bit of that flavor to it. At this point, that this amount of time has elapsed, it's actually okay, because it's in perspective for me. Like, this particular IRA has really grown enormously, so to absorb a loss like this, it's still, it hurts my ego. It hurts my, I love that you'll be able to kid me about this attorney forever, though. That's something we'll always have, Chris.
And it's also in your home state, so that's why I can kid you more. So
Pennsylvania sucks, everyone. Stay away. I don't even know why I live here. I'm so soured now.
So, but tonight, one of the things we want to do is kind of open it up for a lot of people on questions that they have, and things that are kind of topics that are on their mind. Happy to kind of have, again, we call this open mic night, but we didn't come tonight with any specific topic coming to mind, and we wanted to kind of throw it out there for people out there. What are some questions you have? What are some of the challenges you have? What is it that you're working on right now? What can we help you with?
Yes, and who would like to come on and actually talk about it rather than just typing?
Yeah, we'll be happy to bring you on. While people, go do their hair and put their makeup on before we bring them on. Let's see. So we do have a question from Z about, people always talk about how the SEC will come to get you if you're JVing with other investors. What's the real deal? If I'm JVing with another investor or they're bringing capital, what's the violation? So you want me to take that one, or you want to take it? Yeah,
you go ahead.
So I'll start. So the issue or concern is, and first, Gail and I are not attorneys. So you should definitely talk to an attorney, but our interpretation from talking to attorneys is there's something called the Howey test. And really the challenge is, if someone is giving you money and they're investing passively with the expectation to make profit or return based solely on your efforts, then it's considered a security. And that's one of the major test components of that Howey test is that component. So what you need to do is look for an exception to that. And, there are, based on attorney conversations, exceptions, such as making the person be, the ability to be an active participant.
That's the easiest one. And don't you think also like the most fun? I mean, I like the interaction and working, two heads solving things. And to me, it feels more fair too. If it's someone's money, they shouldn't really just be sitting at home wondering what you're doing with it. Like, they should know, have a say.
Now, what does active participant include? That's, again, it's completely interpretive, honestly. And, typically, I don't foresee, the SEC, typically the SEC will only deal in, issues where it's millions. I mean, it's usually a state financial agency that would probably be the first one to crack down on you, and typically would be because of some type of complaint. So, if you keep your partners and everybody happy, more than likely, they don't come looking for you. It's when somebody, files a complaint. And, that's kind of, my philosophy is, and people who are on, we've spoken in the past and stuff. It's about communication, letting people know what's going on. And again, having them participate in the decision-making process, or if they want a more active role, giving them the ability to participate and be active. So it's not solely on you.
Yeah, I had a JV just call about taxes today, long foreclosure, again in Pennsylvania. Just making sure that it's like tax sale season in Pennsylvania. So make sure this one isn't slipping away while we're dithering around with the foreclosure.
So I want to jump to something on this because Christina asked if, so if she's JVing with someone and funded the deal. So if you're funding the deal with someone, I don't believe you can get in any trouble. I don't think you're doing anything wrong. It's the sponsor. The person who you gave the money to is a person who needs to, basically be, let you have the involvement. And it all comes down to, really what's in that JV agreement, and, having that JV agreement written in a way that is really making it be a comprehensive deal. It's the same thing sometimes, like people who do, fix and flips, and, basically like giving some people money. Is it a loan? But if they have, if they're getting profit split from it, technically they should be active. And a lot of times they're not. People give someone money, and instead of charging a specific rate, they get a % of the deal. A lot of times they should be, active in that sense, or there should be, some agreement or something to make sure that, they're not doing any violations. So.
Right. And then Christina asked, how much should she be involved if she's the funder? Well, these in the getting to know you conversations that you have before you team up with someone to do fund a deal. That's one of the really key discussions, because obviously you want to establish up front. And when you are the sponsor and you are taking on funders, these are the kinds of things that really need to be discussed and clarified, and the expectations set correctly. I'm going to handle routine matters. I'm going to call you on every, significant matter about, for any decisions, any big decisions, we're going to discuss them. I'm going to report to you quarterly. I'm going to send you financial data quarterly. Like all that should just be, I guess our JV agreements they say that we will report quarterly, but mine does. You report even more than that.
The way I think about it is, kind of like, again, I work in the corporate world. There's certain things that I can do and make a decision on and basically go do, and okay, I made that decision. There's other things it's like, oh, I need to, basically get ownership approval before I go do something. And if those who are kind of in the 9-to-5 world, it's similar to that. So if you've got an asset and basically the borrower, pays 3 days late, and servicer says, hey, can we wipe the late fees? That's a decision. Sure, I'm going to wipe the late fees. You don't need to go, converse with someone like that. If it's something that hey, I'm filing foreclosure and I'm going to start spending $5,000.
Your money.
Probably a conversation you should have with the JV partner.
I think, in every human endeavor, everyone has sort of a sense of when they can act on their own initiative and when they need to consult the significant other, whether it's like a personal relationship or a funding relationship like this.
And that was where I was going to go next. If you're not in the 9-to-5 world and you have a spouse or significant other, what are you allowed to do without their approval? Think of it that
Very
way.
little in my house. Now, I give the permission. I think your household is organized in a similar fashion.
So, yeah, I still don't even know if I have permission to buy a note yet. So I'm still.
Tell her anything's happening. she doesn't know about this. She just thinks you're in here like playing solitaire. So we'll leave it at that. So, yeah, I want to say also, though, as much as we would love to believe that these regulatory agencies are there to protect the innocent, from what I've seen, they don't really do very much at all. Like I'm not aware of.
It depends on your state, because I've heard of somebody getting, whacked in a state for really not, I think, doing much.
Someone quite innocent doing something quite minor by accident.
Yeah. And, and then on the flip side, there's other things that go on that, basically some seem to get ignored. But so Z asked follow-up question. So in my case, I'd be JVing with someone and I base the purchase of the note on my investor's criteria. They approve what we're going to buy in the split. Of course, I keep them in the loop with everything as far as reporting. So yes. And, and again, I, typically, if I'm doing a deal with someone, I give them, a link, Dropbox, OneDrive, whatever, all the collateral, everything that's there, so they can have access to it. They can go look at whatever. They can ask questions. I go through the asset with them, what it looks like, the UPB, everything kind of, it's not, it's not like, okay, just give me money and I'm going to go buy an asset and you don't even know what asset's involved. I mean, it's, you should know it, see it. You're going to know the borrower's name, their middle name, their social security number, you should know all that. Think of it, no different than you kind of having a rental property and getting a renter in there. I mean, you're putting money into this deal. You want to know as much as possible, and you should know who that person is. That's
right. Yeah. And when you're the sponsor taking on a funder, you should have them fill out a questionnaire with basic information about what their goals are, what their expectations are on the return that they're hoping for, because you often after I have an initial conversation with someone who thinks they would like to invest, that's the first thing I have them fill out, and that really tells me, some people have pretty unrealistic expectations, like they've heard about notes and how great they are, but I've had people tell me they want 25 or 30% returns, and obviously it's better that we say goodbye right now than have a bad breakup later.
So Sylvia asked in regards to that, does your JV partner have access to your servicer or what else? I don't typically give them access to the servicer. I am working on something where the servicing notes, they may be able to get access to those, but I don't want that person calling the servicer, talking with them, because, when you have too many people involved, speaking with somebody, things can get, miscommunicated. And servicers are very easy. They get confused very easily in my experience.
They can do simple tasks.
But if somebody asks me, hey, can I see the servicing comments?
Yes.
Sure. I'll
answer
yes. Servicing comments. And
you can usually download those very easily and just email them.
Download them. So no, it's a good conversation. Sylvia also talked about something in BK that she was looking in servicer notes, and the guy was in trouble, obviously, so it mishandled, and it's been going on since 2013. Yikes.
Yeah, Sylvia, if only you had guided me years ago when I bought this thing. I thought it was kind of comical that this guy kept declaring bankruptcy, and I assumed that I would easily gain the upper hand. That's before I realized that Pennsylvania, I don't know how many other places, they just let people keep doing it. You're sort of helpless to some degree. It's not a good feeling. Now, even though I'm going to take a loss, I don't know whether to call it a small loss or not, but I'm very relieved. And basically the money that I've invested, it's been wrapped up in this thing for so long that even though I'm not going to get it all back, I'm delighted I'm getting, a chunk of money back. So I can move on and do something else. Maybe I'll buy a house with a sinkhole underneath it and cash in. Wait, I already did that.
Yeah. Christina mentioned, yeah, you don't want multiple people starting, directly with the servicer for reasons mentioned. So
No, I don't even want to talk to them, but I certainly don't want anyone else to talk to them.
I actually, it's interesting. Now that you think about it, I'm trying to think of the last time I actually was on the phone with, I spoke to Shante recently on different things, but my client rep or customer rep, Damien, I probably haven't spoken in, oh man, probably 6-10 months,
Yeah.
probably.
I talked to him yesterday. He's fine. He
Oh,
says hi.
how are the dogs? You get more dogs though?
Did not really hear about them. We didn't talk about them.
But no, I mean, I email him. He knows that between 7 and 7:30 in the morning, he's going to get barraged.
Yeah.
So
So Roger's saying with FCI, you can't talk to them. They don't return calls when you leave a message. That is so true, Roger. Once in a while you get someone's phone, like when they start answering your emails, like you start to get the phone numbers and extensions of different people, like, the escrow lady and the insurance person and everything. Like you can sort of start to have access. They do answer their phones when you can't dial the main number, but if you know their extension, you can kind of sneak up on them. Then
I'll tell you, the fastest response I ever got from them, Gail, was when we had that boarding on that asset. And when Gordon saw my name, he was like, no, we're not going to board this with my name on it, because FCI and I had, let's just say we didn't have a good relationship. And it's identical to what you mentioned, Roger. I could not get a woman whose name I think starts with a K or a C to
Cassandra Jensen?
possibly
Yeah, she's the boarding lady. Yeah, you can't.
So it's pretty Yeah,
Oh, sorry. Continue.
I was gonna say, couldn't get a response to emails, even though you get the automated response, say they'll reply back to you within 24 hours. I'm not sure. Her clock must be broken because 24 hours pass, she never responds. This thing called a telephone, she needs to take a course on it from maybe Alexander Graham Bell or somebody, that you actually have to pick up the thing to actually speak, and people talk through that. So yeah, there was I sent a not so nice message, and basically I'm blacklisted from FCI. So
yeah, they get very sensitive. I sent a frustrated kind of angry email to them once, and boy, did I! It's like I really hurt them in the feels. They got all these emails like, oh, don't talk to us like that. And I wasn't even talking. I was just emailing. Like they should have heard the way it sounded in my head. But Roger, I think the other thing, so when you're new and you don't have much with them and they don't really care, it's particularly difficult. The only way I initially got past the hurdle that Chris did was I was far more clever than you, Chris. I'm sorry, this one time.
You bought loans and they're already with them. I know.
No, I knew of this guy. I forget his last name, but his first name was Hector. I don't even know what department he's in, but he is this really helpful person. And when I couldn't get Cassandra to call me back or email or answer anything, I finally just called Hector, and I was like, is she anywhere near you? Can you just go ask her to answer me? And I guess it was embarrassing enough to her that she actually wrote back to me. And this beautiful relationship began. Now they're a pain. I just have to say, but Chris is not welcome at many servicers at this point. He's burned his bridges, so.
Not that many. It's more than one, but less than three.
And you're going to running out of people. You're going to have to service your own loans.
Yeah, that's not a bad thing. So,
yes, Raina Steinhaus or Steinbrink, whatever her name is. She's okay. And Nancy Watson in the escrow department, she's responsive. Yeah, you just have to become somebody to FCI. Up until that point, nothing gets done.
Yeah, I
Sad
mean,
to say.
left with them, I think, I could have my great grandparents service loans and basically get a better response from them. So,
Well, that would be Allied. They seem to have a lot of like senior citizens who work there. They just like very sweet older women. They're very helpful, but they're hard to get on the phone too because I think it's a really small office.
yeah, they've got 7 employees
Hmm.
when I asked them. So, yes, they're very small. Z asked another question. Do either of you think a note investor should just stick with one strategy, such as first non-performing or second NPNs or only PNs?
That is so interesting that you're asking that, Z, because I would say it's impossible to stay in this business and to stick with one strategy. Like you will never, ever like just want to do one thing. Chris and I have not, Chris has dabbled ever so slightly in seconds. I have not ever bought one, though ironically, my first note training was in seconds. So I kind of almost know what to do. But, this is actually a topic that I was going to suggest for our next podcast where we're by ourselves, Chris. It's just sort of, waiting for the perfect deal, waiting for the deal that is just the kind that you want to do. Like you can wait, but it's really more fun to do deals than to keep waiting for one that is
You could be waiting a very, very, very long time.
very long time. Yeah, I think if you want to do deals, you're going to do a lot of different things, and you're going to surprise yourself. And my partnership with Christopher Seveny is a lesson in bursting your paradigms and branching out into beyond your comfort zone. But we're all still alive. I highly recommend it. It's invigorating.
I apologize. I just looked at my phone because we just got a 11 asset tape from our favorite seller. So I was just wondering, what do we do with it? But I don't think it's from the actual seller that we buy from.
It's from some intermediary.
Yep. So yeah, I kind of just to jump along onto the topic of first seconds, and I don't see a difference between, I think, performing and non-performing when you're dealing with first and seconds. I really think it fits your style. And conversations I've had with people, a second is somebody who's, I'll say, patient and really wants to get involved. I'll use the term, basically you're a psychiatrist with the second in a sense, because you're trying to get a feel for what's the borrower going to do, what's going to be the outcome, and you're really focused on the borrower. And it's a patience game to wait it out to see what happens. And personally, for me, that's just not me. On first, it's more, okay, you're worried about, the property first, and the borrower. Yes, you want to, of course, have worry about the borrower in the sense that you don't want to throw someone out of the house, but, your main focus is, okay, what is that property worth, and protecting that asset, which is the property. You don't care about anyone behind you. If the borrower fails, you've got the property that you can go after. So that's really what your kind of main focus is, in protecting the value in that asset. And you're usually more aggressive in first. And trying to get to a resolve versus seconds. On seconds, I don't think you can, they become late, send out, if there's questionable equity, you're not going to sit there and throw in the demand letter. You kind of wait the game and see what the first is doing. And when you're the first, it's like, hey, no pay, no stay. After, a certain period of time, send the demand letter and go. So,
it's interesting that we're talking about that and you're describing the difference, because my very first note experience, I was involved in a fund put together. It was put together, 10 people, $20,000 a piece, create a fund, and there was an education component too. And to me, this was exciting because instead of just paying someone for training, I was investing in a fund, and the training came with it. So it seemed like, earn while you learn kind of situation. No, the fund ended. Christina just asked if it was still going on. But the interesting thing apart, it turned out to be a terrible experience from the education standpoint. There was not really much of an education delivered. But the thing that was very interesting about it was this is a well-known seconds guy who, prides himself on. He does have a training program. He made us all buy it as part of this whole thing. So that was like a very clever little angle for him. But, like 18 months went by and we were supposed to be supposedly kind of working, able to look at the assets that were being bought, able to see what they were doing with each one of them. None of that happened. Like 18 months went by. We were like, have we even bought anything yet? Because we didn't know what the assets were and what was going on. And they showed us like a list of the assets they bought, the servicing notes of what they tried, where they tried to do the workouts. And then they ended up in almost every case, I think they called everybody like once or twice, according to the servicing notes. And if they didn't start making payments, they sold the note. So it turned out like 95% of the notes were sold. Like, I think they got a couple payments from one note out of like 20. And, so after watching this happen several times, I kind of turned to my fellow students in this fund and I said, you know what, this is not really about working out seconds. This is about doing note arbitrage. Like this person, owing to his stature in the community, has access to well-priced notes. He's buying them. And he has a lot of students who want to buy notes. So he's just buying low and selling high. Like that is not working out seconds. I mean, there are people who are, I don't really know for sure, but I always hear great things about Bill McCaffrey, who now does have a training program for the first time. He just started marketing to get students.
Well, that's one of the interesting things about the training programs. And, we've had, conversations, and right now there's, a lot of, people getting into the training and so forth. And there's people that will train you and then sell you assets that they have and basically mark them up. And, for me, I'm kind of like, I don't know. It's almost a conflict of interest in my mind. It's like, hey, you're going to pay me, a few $1,000s, come to my training. And oh, by the way, here's an asset that I bought for $7,000. I'm going to sell it to you for 10. So I make 50% off of it. And hey, maybe you'll make a few bucks on it. That's, to me, I don't know. Is it,
well,
would I do it? No. So,
Chris, people need to get trained somehow.
Yes, they do.
I mean, that's the conundrum.
Yeah.
There's your word for today, conundrum.
I know what that word means.
Okay, very good. Finally, he knows one. Okay. So.
I don't know who that person is. So.
So Christina's asking.
Doesn't start with an F.
I just completely blanked on his last name.
Starts with an A.
Yeah, it's not an F. Let's not start a guessing game here.
Play hangman.
Sounds like.
Play hangman, you'll have a lot of letters.
Yes, he is still around. He's always pitching at the DME and stuff like that. And it's not Mike Ruzicka. Mike Ruzicka is a friend of mine, and I like him, and he's a good guy.
What are the questions people have out there? What are some of the topics?
Speak all of you. People seem to have started murmuring over here about training programs.
So,
what have you heard?
Yeah, Sylvia mentioned you can foreclose from a second, but it's subject to the first, so you better be prepared. Yes, very good.
Yeah, take on the first.
Yeah.
Foreclose, the first is all yours, whatever is going on with it.
Z said, what about taking a business loan to buy notes? Capital is my issue, and I want to purchase notes.
Well, a line of credit.
Yeah.
I don't know if I would take out a loan, depending on the terms, but would they even give you a loan for that?
Oh, I mean, it would have to be
Like an
unsecured.
operating fund
Yeah,
loan.
basically be like an unsecured loan or something that
Yeah.
they have to give you. And, I'm not sure how far that would get you. It's, that's always the challenge of, you want to learn and, it's the fiscal aspect of, the business of, trying to raise capital and, making sure that you've got the experience before you raise the capital is always, the conundrum.
Wait a minute.
We need a little bell or something. So you must have someone somewhere. But there you
It's
go.
for you, Chris.
Yeah, yes, the line of credit. So yeah, you could. My recommendation would be if you do something like that, start with performing loans and understand the servicing process of the due diligence, getting the loan boarded, getting to know the servicer and some people you're working with, just familiarize, because even the process itself, nobody ever teaches you the process of the boarding process, and it now it comes second nature, but the first time it's like confusing of, well, what's this form, what do I have to do, and making sure, and then putting insurance on the property or make sure you're properly insured. There's a lot to it, so starting with a performing note I think is better, because if things take longer, time isn't money, because on a non-performing, you get the taxes, the insurance, and the house, pretty much your assets depreciating. On a performing note, it should be appreciating.
So Christina said they're saving up to fund a deal. Would love to walk with us on it if we don't mind dealing with questions. Christina, that's why we're here. We're looking for questions. Please ask us questions. Not that we can't just talk forever without any encouragement, but it's fun to have questions.
Yes, and basically, if anyone ever has, a deal, like I've gotten phone calls from people, hey, can you take a look at this, or what would you do in this situation? I have somebody who, they're in Ohio and they JV'd with somebody down in Florida, and it was these two guys in Florida who basically disbanded and left them and just deeded the assets back to him. And he's like, oh boy, and they're EFT trying to work through them, and basically I said, he asked if I'd buy them. I said, if I bought them from you, you get crushed based on what I give you for them. So I said, I'll help you if you want to, work them out or figure out the stuff to do. I'll give you a name of attorney or this or that, and the person probably emails me once a week or every 2 weeks with questions and stuff, and I'll hop on the phone sometimes and just talk to them or kind of give them some guidance and stuff, and I don't mind doing that. So let's see. Roger, come on, buddy.
Okay, so one thing, you don't technically have to have your LLC registered with Indiana, though Chris definitely would tell you should.
I think, Roger, for the one you got from me, I think I recorded it for you. If I recall, I said I'll record it for you to save you some of the legwork.
And I would say, Roger, if I didn't record one for you, I'm actually struggling to remember which one this was, whether it was mine or yours.
I think yours is the one not. I think yours is the one not paying him anymore.
What? If you tell me the address, Roger, I will remember. But I just actually today walked someone through using an e-filing service called Simplifile. And if you want to go to them and sign up, once you are set up with them, you can call me and I'll walk you through recording.
You know what, Gail?
What's that?
We're going to do a live Simplifile recording.
Okay, even better.
How's that? People like that? We're going to take an asset. We've got plenty of deeds we need to record.
Yeah.
So we're going on Simplifile.
I have all those assignments of mortgage. We could just
go.
Yeah. Yeah, so Indiana has an extra step where you have to get online and fill out their sales disclosure form. And actually the seller has to sign it. But I think if you bought it from me, I would think I had given that to you, because I usually do. So we'll figure it out.
Yeah. Yeah. Christina said some counties only allow attorneys to e-file, question mark.
Not that I'm aware of. I mean, how would they even know who's e-filing? I mean, they either allow e-filing or they don't. And if they do, and it's on Simplifile, then yeah, they don't know who you are. You could be a chimpanzee.
So, let's see. Christina, I keep getting calls from my investor colleagues locally who want to sell me their newly originated notes. They originate them with a mortgage loan originator, and then they want to unload them. Yes, you'll see a lot of that. And what the challenge that I see with those, so one question to ask is, if they originated them, did they get a lender title insurance policy on them? That's a question. And if it's a note, I would ask, if you're going to buy one, ask for, the documentation, the 1003, which is the application, to see kind of what the borrower filled out, their income and stuff. And, it's always challenging buying a newly originated note. You really need to know a lot about the borrower before, you try and pay top dollar for it, because, sometimes it's sketchy. But, for example, I've owner financed 2 loans to a woman who, she's a realtor. She's a contractor that does buy and holds, and she's in North Carolina. So if I take back a property in her area, North Carolina, I basically sell it to her on seller financing. She rehabs it, gets it leased up, and she buys with an entity, and this entity owns outright like 6 or 7 assets. So she is a very strong borrower, because if she ever failed on this, I can always go after her other assets. So in that case, it's like, hey, look, I have no problem trying to unload that one right off the bat, because I can show how strong it is. If it's a borrower who, is, 19 years old and just has a job and has no credit history, but is making, decent money, yes, they can pass to an MLO, but, are you confident, to a perspective of 90% that person is going to keep paying? So that's something the big thing too that I'll mention, and sorry, Gail, interrupt, is when something's newly originated, make sure you really do a great job of checking the value, because a lot of times on these owner finance deals, sometimes these lenders jack up the price, and they'll put it as like a $30,000 or $40,000 loan on a $20,000 property. As an example, that, basically it can really come back to haunt you. So, Gail, food for thought on that?
Well, I was actually just going to say, in terms of what you were saying about the value, when you're doing contracts for deed, basically you can charge a premium price for sure when you're giving a borrower who could never go into a bank and get a loan. You are rolling the dice on them and selling them a house. So, I mean, the question really, to me, becomes like, first of all, what are the laws about, how you can value a house when you're selling it with owner financing? Like, you can definitely charge a premium price, but how premium? Like, I don't really know where the rules are. I know the usury rules exist to keep you from charging too much interest, but
I've seen people go on Zillow, Trulia, and Realtor and just grab the highest value and say, well, Zillow says it's worth 50, so really it's worth 20, but I'm going to sell it to you for 35, and you're getting 30% equity in the deal. I've seen people physically do that.
Yeah. Well, so, when a house, like, there's sort of like an opportunity cost, like, what is the value of giving someone who can't otherwise get a house, like a chance to buy a house? Like, most houses, I mean, maybe this isn't totally true, they do appreciate over time. And if it's a 30-year loan, I mean, if it's a somewhat inflated price, maybe it becomes closer to that value eventually. But the other thing, and particularly if people improve them, as some eager borrowers do, like well-heeled, well-screened borrowers who are very excited about home ownership. I have someone who just, did an incredible renovation on a house that I sold him with owner financing. But so when you're selling it, people are always like, well, if the house had an inflated value when it was sold, and really every contract for deed we buy had an inflated value when it was sold. But I feel like in most cases, as long as the payments are reasonable, like the buyers care more about affording the payment than they do about the overall price. This is not to say that you should, go crazy on the price, but if people can own a house for the same or less than rent, that's still a good deal for them, even if you've, tinkered you've stretched the price a bit.
So actually, Gail, I'm excited a little bit right now because people are finally asking lots of questions.
I'm sorry, I should stop talking. Read the question.
No, I'm actually scrolling through and I see new message. I'm like, yay. So Sylvia did have a comment about originating, said check if down payment if there's one. And yeah, make sure, the higher the down payment, there's a lot of studies out there. People, when they put a bigger down payment, they're more apt to keep paying.
That's supposed to be the biggest factor in someone staying, consistent in payment, how much money they put down. That's why, when we're selling notes, people always ask, how much did they put down?
Yep.
And I never understood why, but now we all know. So many times people say, don't bid based on a percentage of UPB. What other way is there to bid? Who says don't? The sellers sell based on a percentage of UPB.
Yeah. If they're trying to sell you based on, so it's usually the lower of UPB and the fair market value. If they're trying to sell you on total payoff, a lot of times I won't bid because it's, I'll ask them, I said, okay, will you basically verify the total payoff is substantiated? I mean, UPB is something that's easy to substantiate. But, someone says, oh, there's $30,000 in accrued interest and advances. I'm like, okay, show me every single invoice that was been paid and show me the accounting and show me that a court's not going to, and the court's not going to overturn it. And if they do, will you return me the money based on that? And every answer I've ever gotten is like, yeah, right. So I'm like, then if you're not going to guarantee it, the UPB is something that's pretty much guaranteed. So,
yes.
Jumping back a little bit, Sylvia did ask a question about bankruptcy and the documents to ask for in the BK. I get the same stuff on every loan. I'll ask for the collateral, pay history, servicing comments, and things along those lines. And then the rest of the stuff is all in Pacer. So I'll go through Pacer and check everything that's in there. And that's kind of the treasure trove of information that you can find in Pacer, where it's the it's the borrower's application. They'll have to fill out something about how much they make. Sometimes they have to, include, tax returns. There's the how many creditors there are. There's the proof of claim by the creditor. So there's a lot of
there's their plan, which tells you whether your payment is part of their plan or not. So, and what does it actually mean? We should say, like when their mortgage payment isn't in their BK plan.
So when it's not in there, it means they're paying outside the plan. So, if I file bankruptcy, and I had my house outside the plan, I'm still paying my mortgage company and I'm still dealing with them and everything. I'm not paying a trustee on a BK.
Right, but sometimes they're not paying.
What's that?
And sometimes they're not paying. Like if they didn't put their house in the plan, can you foreclose on it? Or do you have to wait till they're out of BK anyway?
No, you can actually foreclose.
Yeah, I figured it was like having a relief of stay. There's no stay because it's not in the plan.
No, it's not in the plan. So,
yeah. Cool.
Christina asked on the lender title policy, what should they have insured on there exactly? And these are not CFDs or seller finance. So a lender policy is typically I don't know if you can do. I don't think you can do them in CFDs because it's not a recorded lien. On a note, typically, if you originate a note, first position note, you are insuring the value of the loan. It's basically like title insurance, where they ensure that you are first position, and
Mhm.
that it's a valid first position lien. So if somehow somebody else a mortgage popped up later on that was not satisfied, they would pay to quiet title over it. As a lender, so borrowers want to get a owner's policy that protects them against, any deeds that may have been recorded out of order or something, which does happen. I've had where they were supposed to record the satisfaction of one and a new one on another, and they did it backwards, and I had to do quiet title on my Flint property, which ended up getting resolved through title insurance. But yeah, it's basically, I think it adds value to the note if you're originating a new note and you have a lender policy on it. So,
Yeah, it's insurance.
yep. So,
Okay.
I guess if you want to more know how to offer on those newly originated and what percentage of PBA or value would be safe to offer, I base everything off of yield. And it really depends on the state, the borrower, everything. But if it's something newly originated, I typically won't go less than 15% yield. Now, if it was something like a CFD where they were paying for 7 years and converted it to a note, maybe I go down to 12% on that. But if it's a borrower off the street, just walked in and bought the property, I'd be looking for, 15% yield. And if it was a high foreclosure state, I probably wouldn't even, expensive or long foreclosure state, I may not even want to deal with it until it's got more seasoning.
So she is interested in due diligence on CFDs. She's heard horror stories. Horror, really? About CFDs being the wild one.
They are sometimes. I mean, Gail, we've now gone through, 100 and probably 50 assets in the last month and a half. And
Yep.
you seriously, back in the day, some of these things, it was like the wild, wild west. I've got one, and you always wonder, like, why do they create all these laws for CFDs to hurt people and stuff? I've got one where there was a borrower is on a CFD. He gave somebody a CFD, which is illegal. So he's selling a property that has their own. That person stops paying, so he forecloses on him and gets a sheriff's deed on a property he doesn't even own. So now I got to turn around and sue this guy because of it.
Yeah, so we were looking at all these performing CFDs. This is particularly interesting because the people are generally, the borrowers are great, but the paperwork, in some cases is pretty horrendous. And, you just see all kinds of things that people do. The example Chris just gave is one. We have one where there were two women. I don't know what their relationship is. They might be like relatives or whatever. They're both on the contract for deed. And one of them, I guess, decided they didn't want to be on it anymore. So she gave a quitclaim deed to the other person. Well, like neither one of them owned the house. They can't deed it to each other. So there's just like things that have to be unraveled. I think the thing to ask is it curable? Like most things are curable, but probably when you're a beginner, you're not going to necessarily know. That's why an attorney review or a review by Metasource, a company that does nothing but, look at collateral all day, is really, really important when you're looking at CFDs. But I don't feel like there are crazy situations. This note that I just, in Pennsylvania, that's a note. It's not a CFD. It's been like the worst, like one of the worst experiences I've had in this business. And
so to put it in perspective, that borrower that quitclaim deeded it, that would be me taking Gail's house, and me quitclaiming it to Christina. And be like,
yes.
deed this house and let's go record it. What baffles me is in some of these counties, they're very good. Like, Indiana, Lake County is the most painful county to get something recorded. But on the flip side, they check to make sure that it's legit, like not, John Doe just deeding properties over to everybody. They'll check
Yeah.
and say, no, you can't deed this property.
They look to see who owns it now, right? Before they just
Now,
record the new deed.
some of these other
It's
jurisdictions,
simple.
we don't care who owns it. Here you go, baby, stamp it, good, pay your fee, we're happy.
Yeah, we make $30 every time you record something. Bring it on. So yeah.
Gail, just curious, what other things as part of due diligence for a CFD do you do versus a note?
Well, I just want to reassure Z that a good title report is going to be incredibly helpful in catching things about CFDs. The biggest, I think, things that concern me the most about CFDs are, like unpaid utility bills. Like you can see on a title report any bill that has been outstanding for long enough that it's become a lien on the property, but you can have monstrous bills, particularly water and electric bills, that are not liens yet. They're not going to show up on a title report. So it's just very important to have a process where you're checking all the important things, and you literally have to make phone calls to the utility companies, to code enforcement, to the treasurer to find out if there are delinquent taxes that aren't showing up in title reports also. Like title reports catch some things, but not all. Like you can't take it as a complete answer.
Yeah. And Z, if you want, after, send me an email. I'll send you my due diligence template that I put together, and anyone else wants it. I think I've sent it around once in the past. Kind of put a lot of those questions on things to look up, and I just fill in the blanks, and send me an email and I'll send that out. And if anyone else wants it, just shoot me an email and I'll send it over to you.
You're like the gift that keeps on giving, Chris.
I think I need to get that again. So, by the way, speaking of gifts that keep on giving, so for those who did give us a review, I finished everything regarding downloading the bank data. So I'm hoping that for those who left us a review on iTunes, Stitcher, or Google Play, again, make sure that you either post it on Facebook or send me the email, and I will send you the software program you can download all the information from the banks. On the Notes and Bolts Facebook group, I did post the March data to kind of see what the data spits out into. And, I can also provide some sheets of what all that information means, because it might be Greek to some of you, but I kind of tease people by putting that up there. And if you're interested in the software and you've left us a review, I will gladly give it to you for the wonderful price of $0.
Awesome. Well, it's an hour.
Mm-hmm.
We're being we're being a little tighter on time than we normally have, because we have this massive pile of loans that we're buying, and there's just always something else to be done. So Sylvia's having trouble leaving a review. Where were you trying to do it, Sylvia? What platform? Now you can email Stitcher.
Just do iTunes.
Yeah, iTunes is a no-brainer, hopefully.
Yeah, hold on. I think there's instructions on our podcast episodes, and I'm going to check that right now real quick. So just keep talking. Keep people off.
Talk amongst yourselves. Okay. So does everyone even understand what Chris is offering here? Basically, there is a well-known subscription service that lets you see which banks have loans to sell. And it's quite expensive. I think I said that already. And basically, banks only publish this information quarterly, but the subscription is monthly. So you can already see the problem. You pay for 3 months and get information for 1. So it's already not a good idea. So Chris had already had the software written that would go to the same source that the subscription service goes to, download the information, and it's yours is not refined. It's not as the bells and whistles aren't the same, but basically for the relative cost of zero, it's pretty darn good.
Do you want to know which banks are selling assets? If that's what you want to know, then this is what it tells you. So in the notes here, I put a link for how to subscribe and rate the podcast. And on there, if you go to that link, in the link, if you go to gooddeedsnoteinvesting.com/podcast and click on any episode, if you scroll to the bottom, there's a how-to link, and you can do it on, now it's Apple Podcasts, not iTunes, Google Podcasts, TuneIn, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, and Player FM. So many.
Right. So yeah, leave a review and then take a screenshot of it, send it, or if you can paste a link into an email, send it to Chris.
Post on Facebook, whatever.
Yes, the magic will happen. Yeah, post on Facebook. That's even better because that will make other people feel competitive and jealous that you're getting all the goodies and they're not.
Mm-hmm. Gail, any, and by the way, Christina, it's okay if you haven't listened on iTunes. That's fine. Our service does tell us how many listeners we have.
We do. So did you check our stats?
I haven't checked our stats. Actually, I'm checking.
I haven't. We've been so busy. So I apologize to everyone who's waiting for an answer from me about something. And I'm going to go apologize to my husband and reintroduce myself to him. But yeah, it's been really nutty, very nutty lately. But we have a lot of performing contracts for deed that will be going up for sale very soon. And the reason I want to do a podcast about waiting for the perfect deal is, like, I think the vast majority of people who listen to us I think they're only interested in non-performing loans because they see that as being where the greatest potential gain could be. But actually, with performing notes, there are many strategies that give you the ability to profit from a performing note also, and even partner with JVs on performing notes. And we're going to teach those because we would love to interest you all in these performing notes. We have put a ridiculous amount of time into doing the due diligence on them ourselves. So we think we're pretty confident that we have identified all the ones that have title issues that we need to resolve before we put them up for sale. So the ones that we're putting up for sale, basically are good to go. And we would love to teach you all, going back to Z's question about sticking to one strategy. Don't stick to one strategy. There's too many opportunities in other strategies. So we're going to teach about partials and different ways of doing partials, where you don't have to wait until, 5 years to start getting some payments yourself. And so just look for that.
That's actually a great strategy for someone like Z. You pick up, a note, performing note, call it for $10,000 you acquired it, a 13-15% yield, and then turn around and flip it to somebody at a 9% yield. You can either make a few bucks off of it, or you can tag some money to the back end. And, that's another alternative or option that you can do. So yeah, that's, there's a lot of creative ways to get to things. And by the way, Gail, we have 33,535 downloads. And what's interesting, in the last 90 days, we are now averaging 5,000 downloads per month. So we started at like 2,000 and then kind of bumped up to 3,000, which is like, basically, 1,000, basically, 1,000 per month. And now we're up to about 5,000 per month. So keep this pace, that would be about 60,000 a year. So
awesome.
Yeah, not too shabby.
We owe it all to you guys. Thank you so much for listening. And
So,
Yay. Who would have imagined?
yeah, I mean, our goal, and we've said this in the past, I think our goal was like 10,000 downloads in the first year or something. It was, we kind of set the bar low because we didn't know how many, we figured, hey, we get 50 people listening. Hey, we're happy. And we were just
Yeah, really.
story. And now, we've got, average episodes, about 500 downloads per episode. So it's
Yeah.
good. And actually,
It's really gratifying because there aren't that many people who do notes. I think there's a lot more who would like to, but haven't found their way in yet. So
the thing that I enjoy is when people will call me up and be like, "Hey," and I have no clue who this person is. I don't see him online or anything. And they're like, "Hey, I listened to your podcast," and I'm like, "Oh, cool." It's
I know. I was talking to someone who wants to learn the note business, don't we all? And he was like, I heard you just got your daughter to give you money for a note. Like, I would really like to get my girls into it. And I thought, wow, like people are really paying attention, Chris. So watch what you say.
Yeah. Well, I can't use any big words, so it's I can't do too much.
But if you think of one, I'm ready.
What was the one? Wait, hold on. What was the one? Oh, was it neophyte, or I forget the one I had used.
Neophyte? I think you didn't that one already.
That's the one I use because that's the only big word I know.
Yeah. That was one you knew.
So.
Yep.
Good. Okay. Any last minute questions, comments before we check out for the evening? So.
Christina's still struggling in Stitcher. Christina, just try a different one.
Yeah, we don't care where
on Stitcher.
I don't know how to do it either because I don't leave myself reviews. I'm not like
you didn't write all this.
Oh, yeah, I'm not like on Yelp with people, leaving themselves or having all their family members.
We hire people from overseas to write them. That's why the broken English in a lot of.
The other thing I'm honest too is I don't listen to our episodes. I feel like
I've never listened to it. Like I never want to hear one. Honestly,
go back and listen to the first one, and you'll be like, "Oh my God, why?"
No.
Yeah, you're like, "I'm never doing this again."
No, I'm upset that my one son started listening. And he started with the first one. I was like, "Oh, just don't even."
I've heard people actually go back and re-record their first one after they've done the 50, and I'm like, "Yeah, you know what? Just leave it." And we're that's our just natural roll with it. So it probably sucked. I know. I think my breathing was like. It was like Darth Vader.
We were so nervous. Oh my God. Yes. It's true. Like you do, I guess anything, you just keep doing it. It's just becomes like breathing. Yeah. So Casey, thank you for asking me about my vacation. It was very nice. Seattle is freaking cold. It was in like the low 60s there. I was the only one smart enough to have brought a jacket. But we saw orcas, which was really amazing. And I don't even know how people normally see orcas because it's very foggy because of these temperature inversion things. And you're not allowed to drive up to an orca. You're not allowed, if you see one in the distance, you can't get closer than 300 yards, which a person explained to me. I was like, 300 yards, is that like a football field? He goes like, that's 3 football fields. So I'm like, oh.
I like to comment about my way of seeing orcas.
Yeah, no, SeaWorld. Those are the sad, depressed orcas who just bust out and yeah. No, I actually saw some, it was very foggy. I don't know how we ever would have seen them, but they just popped up like toast right next to the boat, and we got to see them.
Like, my vacation of when I took my son fishing for the first time, and he got, he caught his 3 sunfish, and orca, a sunfish. Honestly, he wouldn't have cared the difference between them.
He also fell in, didn't he? That's also like a very.
Oh, come on, Sylvia, you can't be doing that to me. So.
Yeah, watch that movie Blackfish. Chris, you won't be so sunny about SeaWorld.
Yeah,
I can tell you about that. Okay. Ephemeral. Way to go, Sylvia.
I think that's something like with your brain or like a drug or something.
Let's have a new portion of the podcast called Stump Chris.
So
Let's throw out
that's a
vocabulary.
hard thing. Hey, if you put a number in front of me or give me any math problem, then you're gonna have trouble stumping me.
I know. Chris stumbled over some math in an episode, and it was just like my best moment.
Yes.
Like, that made me so happy. Thank you, Chris.
Yeah, I was
It was
trying.
even my
I
birthday.
remember I was trying to figure present value formula, and I was like, "Why can't I get it to work?"
I got it to work today. So,
Good.
yes.
Well, Gail, I think it's about time to wrap up this episode of the Good Deeds Note Investing podcast. So I'd like to thank all of you again for listening and watching this, if you're watching it on YouTube as well. Every Thursday night at 8:30 p.m. Eastern. As a reminder, we have open mic night. If you go to gooddeedsnoteinvesting.com, you can register, where you'll get email notifications to register each week as well. And any final thoughts, Gail?
Yeah, thank you all. Thank you for getting us to 33,500 downloads. And thanks for coming every week. We really enjoy and look forward to it. And that's true because we have so much work to do right now. And here we are just chatting away. I'll be sorry at midnight that we took the time, but thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for all the love. We send it right back to you, and go out and do some good deeds.
Thank
Good night,
you all.
everyone.